truly honored to have as our special guest today the Honorable Joschka Fischer, Germany's Foreign Minister and Vice Chancellor in the government of Gerhard Schröder from 1998 to 2005. Minister Fischer was a leading figure in Germany's Green Party, and according to opinion polls, he was the most popular politician in Germany for most of the duration of the Schröder government. In 1999, facing down the majority of his own party who opposed Germany's military involvement in Kosovo, Minister Fischer supported the German participation in the Kosovo War. That meant that for the first time since World War II, German soldiers would actively participate in combat in the NATO-led intervention in Kosovo. He argued that pacifism cannot be honored in the face of genocide and ethnic cleansing, amidst allegations that Serbia was planning to commit genocide against the Kosovo Albanians. Joschka Fischer was also in favor of stationing German troops in Afghanistan, but he advised Chancellor Schröder not to join the U.S.-led war in Iraq in 2003. By the time he left office in October of 2005, he was the second longest-serving foreign minister in Germany's post-war history. The foreign minister office is regarded as the second most powerful position in the German government. Minister Fischer is currently the Frederick H. Schultz Class of 1951 Professor of International Economic Policy in the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs of Princeton University. He also has an appointment at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Joschka Fischer to our program. It is truly an honor to have you with us today.
Thanks a lot.
Let me begin by asking you, in 2003, you advised your Chancellor, Gerhard Schröder, not to support the U.S. invasion of Iraq. What were your reasons? Did you know something that the Americans did not know?
No, I think we had more or less the same level of knowledge, of information, of intelligence, but I didn't believe that there was enough evidence to go to war. Saddam was in a box. Blix and his team was in the country, and
the inspection teams.
The inspection teams, and led by Hans Blix at that time. And there was no reason to stop that process. They worked, I think, very efficiently on the ground. From my assessment, all the questions which were raised in '91, not by leftists, but by Colin Powell, by, at that time, President George Bush,
the first,
James Baker, Brian Scowcroft, all these questions were valid not to go into Baghdad, because to go into Baghdad means to take over the responsibility for the whole of the Middle East. And I was not sure whether the Americans, the American people, the American voters definitely knew what that would mean. And the third question was how to avoid that Iran will be the big winner, because bringing democracy to Iraq, and Iraq was an artificial colonial construction constructed by the British Foreign Office, and it was an artificial state from the very beginning. So bringing democracy to Iraq means Shiite majority, and Shiite majority means to strengthen decisively the influence of Iran. So there were a lot of contradictions, and the reasons to go to war we didn't share, so we said no.
Your assessment of the situation in Iraq now, this was last week's Newsweek. The cover story says, "We're losing, but not all is lost." Do you think that America has lost?
I don't believe that a change to the better will be possible in the future. The price is tremendously high. It's the Iraqi population, but also young Americans die there every day. And thirdly, what will be the consequence for the region? As I said before, it's an artificial state, and without a new national consensus between the Kurds, the Shiites, and the Sunnis, I think it will be almost impossible to avoid a civil war. And behind Shiites and Sunnis are regional powers, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, which are also part of this situation in the region. So I think the future will be very grim.
Very grim. So what should we do now?
Well, I think it's very important that you try to change the regional setting.
Such as?
Talking with Iran. It's not only about Iraq. I'm also concerned about the recent developments in Afghanistan, where terrorism came back, where an insurgency came back. And once again, here the regional players, especially Iran and Pakistan, are key. So you have to talk to them. You have to try to engage them in a positive process. Syria is another element. I think Syria is key for a change in the strategic setting in the region. If it would be possible to bring them over, it would have tremendous positive effects for Israel, Lebanon, but also for Iraq. So try to rearrange the strategic setting would be my advice, and then move forward with the disengagement.
In the meantime, though, what should be done to the 144, and some say 150,000 American troops in Iraq right now? Should there be a drawdown timetable?
Well, together with, I think, a different regional strategy and approach. Without that, I think the situation will be very complicated. It will be not an easy task if you are able to change the regional environment, because in Iraq, it's not only about Iraq. Everybody now is watching very carefully in the region, or not only in the closer region, but also in the more broader region. Even in Pakistan and India, everybody is watching very carefully what the next weeks and months will bring, which decisions will be made in Washington, D.C., because this will have a tremendous impact for all the players there. So I think an engagement in a positive way to prepare the disengagement and avoid a collapse of Iraq, that's exactly what it should be done in the next weeks and months.
You've said very clearly what you think we should do, but knowing what you do know about this government, the Bush White House, and all the intricacies of diplomacy, of other considerations, what do you think will actually happen in Iraq, the future of Iraq? Do you see a unified Iraq or a federated, a partitioned Iraq, the three-state solution, as Leslie Gelb had once advocated?
Well, this is a very important question, ma'am, because the Middle East is different, and especially based on the European history and experience, we understand the sensitivity of borders. Now, beyond Egypt and Iran, very old civilizations and states, the whole of the Middle East was created after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire at the end of the First World War. So the borders are mostly drawn in the Foreign Office or in the Quai d'Orsay in Paris, in the Foreign Ministry in Paris. These borders are questionable and were questioned and will be questioned if it is convenient to the interests of some of the players. These borders are very young, the states are very young, so starting to disintegrate existing states, you don't have a guarantee where it will end.
That it will not go beyond Iraq's borders.
That's exactly what we are talking about. So to preserve the territorial integrity would be key for stability and peace in the region. But on the other side, you won't get that without a new national consensus. And I don't see, reading the newspapers, watching the TV reports, that there is a serious option for a new national consensus. The Kurds have their own interests, the Shiites have their own interests, and the Sunnis have their own interests. So the second question will be, if you can't keep Iraq together, which I definitely don't know, I think it's in our interest to keep it together. But if not, can you contain it into Iraq, or will be there a spillover effect in a middle-term perspective for the whole region? If this will take place, then we will be in a very, very serious mess, much more serious than the mess is today.
Would you say that should that worst-case scenario happen, wouldn't that be the price that the United States paid for its unilateralism? What?
Well, I don't want to look back. I mean, this is we have to look forward, and from as an outsider, as a friend of the United States who loves this country and thinks that this is the indispensable nation for a better world order. I think it's key that the United States will develop a new national foreign policy consensus. If every 4 or 8 years the pendulum will swing into the extremes, I think this will create not only for the U.S. but for all the allies, friends of the United States, a very, very, to use diplomatic words, complicated situation. So I'm more interested in look forward and there to reach a new national consensus, also internationally based with the allies and friends. This would be, I think, perfect.
So basically, you're really saying that international cooperation, multilateralism, is the calling of the day.
Well, it's not only the calling of the day; it's the calling of the century. I mean, if I would have asked you 15 years ago whether you would believe that the U.S. economy will depend from decisions of the Central Bank of Communist China one day, I think you would have thought this guy is crazy. But this is now the reality of today. If you look to the global issues, the global environmental issues, the tremendous growth rate in China, in India, in East and Southeast Asia, and South Asia, you will see that all these problems are problems of a globalized mankind. And this is a two-way street. In the old days, it was impossible that a group of terrorists with an organization basis in the mountains of Afghanistan could have attacked the most important power in the world. It happened in 9/11. This is also an element, a very alarming element of globalization, weapons of mass destruction. The global environmental challenges, climate change at the top, the resources management for a growing global economy. All this, I mean, you can only solve in negotiations and cooperation. So even if we don't like it, we will be forced by history and globalization into an international system which will be based on cooperation. Everybody depends from this process, even the most powerful.
Turning to Afghanistan, what is your sense of what's going on, and where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, two elements are key. First of all, Afghanistan needs a long period, and it must be done by the Afghans by themselves. So to guarantee that, you need a strong central government, which
there is not now.
Which there is. I mean, this is a development. This is a process. We achieved a lot. When I look back to 2001, 2002, I mean, the situation has changed to the better. It's no question about that. On the other side, if you look forward, there's a lot to do, and it will be a very long process. So you need a strong central government which can deliver security and keep the country together. There, I think we should focus on, especially now, on police, the judicial system, and the police. The army, the reconstruction of the army, I think, produced pretty good results. So we must work on that. And secondly, a new regional consensus. Without the consent of the major players around Afghanistan, it will be very complicated.
And which are the major players in the region are
Pakistan,
Iran,
and in the north, Russia, and behind Pakistan, India is playing a very important role.
Right.
So you can't discuss Afghanistan with the Pakistanis without having the Kashmir and the Indian-Pakistani relation and the Kashmiri conflict looming in the background. So there is no discussion about that without this framework. You have to understand. And on the other side, Iran, I mean, it's the framework. What will be the future of the Iranian-U.S. relations? What about regime change? And so on. And in the north, Russia. What will be the role of Russia? And China is playing more and more an important role. So it seemed to be also the battlefield of regional interests, and you have to neutralize that. And there, I think the West, especially the United States and Europe, are playing a very important role.
Are you concerned about a Taliban takeover or retake of the government in Afghanistan?
I mean, if the Taliban, if we would be foolish enough and say farewell, and if the Taliban will take over, we will have this, I mean, the same situation than pre-9/11. If you look to the border region, to part of the border region, Waziristan, I mean, you have there now, again, a restructuring of Al-Qaeda, and with the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, you would have a broader organization basis. There were, if you look to the history of Iraq and Afghanistan conflict, in Iraq you had many changes for the reasons to go to war, for the strategic goals. In Afghanistan, we never had a change, neither in the reasons nor in the goals or in the interests. We have to stick to that, but on the other side, strengthening the national government and national institutions, and on the other side, creating a new regional framework and consensus. This is the way into the future, and this will also, I think, one day open the door for a reduced international presence in Afghanistan.
Now, Germany plays an important role in Afghanistan. How many troops do you have there?
Well, we have several thousand there.
Several thousand, but they are not in combat roles.
Well, this is an ongoing discussion, and my position is quite clear. Our allies, the UK and Canada, are fighting, and NATO is a military alliance based on solidarity, and we should really help them.
So, in other words, you would like to see that the German troops in Afghanistan...
I would not like to see. I think it's from my point of view, they should do that. It's a question of solidarity.
Yeah. Now, just a quick question on Iran and North Korea. How concerned are you that they have both gone nuclear?
Well, I think North Korea has a very negative effect, because it's a rotten regime, a terrible dictatorship. And now they managed it to become a nuclear power. So many smaller and middle-sized states around the world will now reassess their position. If such a rotten regime can do it, why not we? I mean, not Germany. I mean, those people who are asking this question. And it has, of course, an encouraging effect for Tehran. Tehran is much more dangerous because it's North Korea wants to survive as a regime by isolation. Tehran tries to play the role of the regional dominant power, the regional hegemonial power. And the effect will be that several neighbors, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, whoever, will reconsider their position. Israel and some others will see that as an existential threat and react. So if Iran will go nuclear, I would bet that the consequence will be more instability in the region, driven by a nuclear arms race.
Arms race.
And this will completely change the security posture of Europe too.
Yeah. So you think we should engage in direct talks with Iran and also North Korea?
Yes.
Right away.
Definitely.
Right
definitely.
away. Without delay.
Without delay. Maybe we lost too much time.
Now, on German-U.S. relations, how much has it recovered from the low days of 2003, after Germany refused to go with America?
Well, from my point of view, it was never as bad as it was discussed in the press. For example, on the level of the intelligence cooperation of the security services, on many other fields, even on the level of the cooperation of the Secretary of State and the Foreign Ministry or Interior Ministry with our Interior Ministry, with the General Attorney here, it was always excellent. So from my point of view, it was a question how we define friendship. And I think if things get serious, a friend has the duty to talk his friend the truth. And from the very
including if the friend is wrong.
Especially if the friend is wrong. I mean, if the friend is right, you don't need a friend to get applause. Everybody will say you are a nice guy. But if you have the feeling, and I mean it in a very serious way, if you think the friend is making a terrible mistake, then my definition of friendship is not to say, okay, we'll follow you, but my definition is to say, reconsider it. It's really a serious mistake. That's my definition of friendship, and we did it. And I think we were proven right. I mean, we agreed that after 9/11 there must be a change in the Middle East. But, and there was a broad highway of responsibility which led us together to Afghanistan. I mean, we put our government at risk to go with our military force together with our allies in the United States into Afghanistan. But Iraq, from the very beginning, we thought this will be a terrible mistake. Don't do it. The reasons are not valid. The strategy is not seriously defined. The consequences are not in a serious way considered. So our recommendation was, if you want to change, and you must change, we must change together the Middle East, it must be a more democratic Middle East. But for a more democratic Middle East, you need the backing of the majority. That's the definition of democracy. And to get the backing of majority, the next step would have been to broker an honest, sustainable, maybe painful peace between Israel and the Arabs, Israel and the Palestinians, and then with the full credibility of an honest peace broker, plan carefully the next steps. Saddam was not a direct threat from our assessment. He was in the box. It was not the issue. The issue was changing the Middle East because there was the threat of terrorism and there was the threat of weapons of mass destruction. And Saddam is an evil person, a terrible dictator, but at that time he was not the problem which had to be tackled.
What do you see is the role of Germany in the world today? What would you like it to be?
It's complicated to explain for a non-European audience because foreign policy is still national-based, so German foreign policy. But even for the most powerful two European nations, P5 permanent members in the Security Council, nuclear powers, France and UK, without Europe, they are playing also only a very reduced role in the global system of today and tomorrow. So our common challenge is Europe. And Europe will play, I think, the key role, or we will lose altogether if we can't manage it to overcome the obstacles, especially to form a common European foreign and security policy. It's our common security we cannot define German security without Polish, French, Hungarian or Italian or Spanish security. It's European security, and it's also a common market now and must become, I think, a more united foreign policy force.
Speaking of German security, how dependent is Germany on Russia's oil and gas? Germany has just signed this 5 billion euro contract with Russia to get energy, and does that not tie you more to Russia?
Yes and no. It's a European dependency, because we have the reality of the common market. We have the reality of the euro. I mean, it would be naive, or maybe even stupid, to think Germany would have enough gas, but Poland would have a shortage. The markets would immediately react, and our division of labor is so sophisticated. So the British, the German, the French, or whoever industry would be within a few days shut down, because the parts won't come from Poland, Hungary, or wherever. So it's a European reality. And of course, we have any interest in excellent strategic relations with Russia, not only based on the energy dependency, but also because Russia will be a key factor, and was a key factor in the European history since the 17th century. But on the other side, it's also quite clear Europe has interests. And one of the core interests is that we are not going back to the rules of the empire days. And therefore, an independent Ukraine, an acceptance of human rights, an acceptance of the rule of law in our relations with Russia is another element. So we are working on that. And the third element is we must reduce our dependency from nuclear energy or from fossil energy. That's the common challenge. And we achieved a lot there in Germany.
But not enough, huh? Not yet, yeah.
I mean, we need, it depends very strongly on the prices. We need a serious push, maybe compared with the Manhattan Project or so, but in a peaceful way, to go through and to reduce our dependency from fossil energy and nuclear energy, because, I mean, nuclear energy always has the risk that something will go wrong, and then you have a national catastrophe which will be unbelievable.
Right, yeah. But also, I guess everyone in the high energy consuming areas need to have a much more sensible energy policy. Russia has just raised the prices of gas to Georgia, doubled the prices. And who is to say that Russia will not, double or triple the prices of its gas and oil supplies to Europe someday?
Yeah, but the European market is more powerful, believe me.
Yes.
I mean, and blackmailing would be very short-sighted. The European reaction on when Russia reduced the transport of gas last winter, the European reaction was, I think, quite blunt, and from my assessment, this was a big mistake of Putin.
My final question to you, because our time is just about up, is that considering that you were the most popular politician in Germany for many, many years, do you have any plans, perhaps, to run for the chancellorship of Germany, equivalent of the White House?
No, I always used to say to Gerhard Schröder at that time, the chancellor and my boss, maybe I'm the only German who is not interested in your office because I watch too closely what it means to be chancellor. No, my life in domestic politics is came definitely to an end. There is no way back.
So you will play the role of an elder statesman, doling out very sage advice.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I do here in the university, teaching students. I write a book, articles, have nice interviews, anything like that. I mean, it's in every lifetime you must know when you have to close the door because a period has come to an end.
Thank you, Minister Joschka Fischer. It was truly a pleasure and honor to have you on our program today.
Thank you very much.
This is Mei Chang. Thank you for watching International Forum today. See you next time.